Good morning, folks. This is Billy Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Services Division. On behalf of our Commissioner, David Giacchino, and the rest of the staff in Department of Revenue and Taxpayer Services, we'd like to welcome you to today's presentation of taxation of hemp-based cannabinoids. Now, that's easy to say, right? So, anyway, we're glad to have you along with us today. Thank you for signing up. And certainly for those of you that may be joining us in a recording later, we appreciate that as well. So, with me today, we have our lovely presenter from Taxpayer Education, Miss Katie Julian, who will be walking you through part of the presentation. And we also have a special guest, Mr. Tommy Sneed, who is the Department of Revenue's Chief Compliance Officer. That means he's important, but also it means he knows a lot of stuff too, particularly about today's subject. So we appreciate Tommy joining us and being able to share his expertise with you guys as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Katie, who will walk you through some administrative things here and then begin the presentation. And we thank you again for joining us. Have a good day, everybody. Talk to you in a minute.
Thanks. Thank you, Billy. And we're really excited to have Tommy Sneed with us today. It's the first time he's been our special guest on one of these monthly webinars, hopefully the first of many times. But thanks for joining us. We are going to be talking, as Billy said, about the taxation of hemp-based cannabinoids, as well as other aspects of the law that passed a year ago regulating hemp-based cannabinoids, and not just taxation, but just a few things to go through before we get started. If you look at the slide you've got in front of you right now, if you have any issues with audio or issues during this webinar, you can always leave and then come back. We will have a recording of today's presentation on our website later today, or definitely by tomorrow. You can go to tn.gov/revenue, click on taxpayer education and then tax webinars. Same place you went to register for this webinar. That's where you can view recordings of all of our webinars and also get a PDF of today's presentation. We have that posted there now. So while I'm talking about a few more housekeeping things, if you want to jump over there to our website and grab that PDF, it will have live hyperlinks that you can go to, whereas from this WebEx, you won't be able to click on the hyperlinks, but on the PDF you can. We will be keeping chat open during the presentation today because we've got a pretty small group. If we don't answer your question in chat, that may be because we're about to get to that question later on in the slides. But we'll definitely try to answer all the questions we can. Keep in mind, this is a new law. So a lot of stuff, we don't have all the answers yet, but we will definitely be imparting what we do know. I'll explain a little bit more of this later, but this law actually has Department of Revenue, us, and the Department of Agriculture both kind of regulating things and setting the rules and regulations for stuff. So you see at the bottom of the screen here, this is our website and our email address. If you've got questions that don't get answered today, we'll give you this email address again later in the presentation, but also our taxpayer services helpline number. All right, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and move along here. If you haven't already gotten the PDF, again, it's at tn.gov/revenue. Click on taxpayer education and then tax webinars. Like I said, we are definitely going to be talking about more than just the taxation of hemp-based cannabinoids. This bill that passed about a year ago now in last year's legislative session is all about the regulation of sale and distribution of products that contain hemp-derived cannabinoids. Most of this law is going to be in TCA 43-27-201. Of course, the taxation part is going to be in Title 67. But we're going to be today discussing a timeline of all the aspects of this law when they go into effect or have gone into effect and will go into effect. Some key definitions. We're going to talk about this hemp tax, the taxation of the hemp-derived cannabinoids, how you will report that tax. Then Tommy's going to jump in and talk to us about the compliance part of things, the inspections, the testing. We here at Revenue won't have anything to do about the testing, but I'm going to explain a lot of that to you, and then we're going to be sharing some resources with you. So you can see here, this timeline will give you a good idea of how we're on the road for this law right now. Not everything has been rolled out yet. Like I said, the law did pass last year in May of 2023. It was Public Chapter 423, signed into law. I believe it was May 11th. Some parts of the law became effective immediately, right there in May. Of course, some of these products were already being sold and not regulated at all. So the aspects that went into effect immediately put in some regulations right there on the day the governor signed the bill in May of 2023. A couple months later, July 1, the tax requirement began. Of course, that was for the July period. So taxation should have begun. If you're selling these products, you should have started taxing them on July 1st, 2023. We'll get into that here in a little while. Well, you can see where this red pin is dropped here. We're kind of in between when the taxation requirement began and then July of 2024, where everything else that's part of this new hemp law goes into effect. Licensing requirements, inspections, compliance of all the parts, all of that will go into effect on July 1. So we're going to tell you everything we know about it all thus far. Some stuff is still in the works, but we'll get to that here in a few minutes. So Public Chapter 423, if you've got the PDF open, you can click on that public chapter link there. We're going to dive into all the different aspects of this public chapter that this new law goes into: the definition of hemp-derived cannabinoids, the age requirements for selling it, marketing of these products, transporting the products, compliance. Of course, a big part of this law is what happens if you're not in compliance. Taxation of the products. What happens if you're in violation to any of these aspects? Product standards, inspections, licensing, testing, labeling. All of those aspects are covered in this public chapter 423. So the definition of a hemp-derived cannabinoid, very important aspect of this because there are lots of products with that contain hemp-derived cannabinoids. So the definition, according to our law here in Tennessee, is a cannabinoid other than delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. I said that kind of right, I think, or an isomer derived from such cannabinoid that is derived from hemp in a concentration of more than 1/10 of 1% or 0.1%. Also, more commonly known, hemp-derived cannabinoid product containing delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. That is the last time I'm going to say that. We're going to call that THC from now on, okay? A hemp-derived product containing delta-9 THC in a concentration of 0.3% or less on a dry weight basis. So diving a little deeper into that, making it a little more clear for all of you that are not scientific like me, the law very clearly defines what this hemp-derived cannabinoid, which products are legal. So you can see in the green on the left there, you got Delta 8, Delta 10. I'm not even going to try to pronounce all of these because it might be kind of funny. Or maybe I should try, but I think I'm not going to. THCP, THCV, and THCA. There are some, you may have heard in the news, the Department of Ag right now is going over some issues regarding THCA that I think are still undetermined. But right now, the way the law is written, for purposes of this law, the definition of a hemp-derived cannabinoid includes everything you see on the left-hand side of this chart here. What it does not include, yes, Billy, you want to try to
Oh,
pronounce some of this stuff for me?
oh, absolutely not. I will not do that. And you've done a great job. I think what you were getting ready to say there was something that was super important because, we're giving you the law as of today. When we're recording
Mhm.
this in late February, the legislature's in session right now. So there's some possibility that there could be some adjustments on this. We don't know of any that are pending right now, other than maybe some definitions like Katie just mentioned on that one product there. But as things change, our department is really tied into the legislature. We're going to update and we're going to inform, if that does happen. But for right now, this is where we are today, and I think that's really important on this subject today. Okay,
Absolutely,
thank
Billy.
you.
Thanks for mentioning that. A lot of states came before us in passing laws very similar to this. So we had a chance to watch and see what some other states did. And I think, from what I understand, the law is pretty good the way it's written. But I would not be surprised if in the coming years we see some amendments to this and some changes. Another thing to note also is that this law does not include substances categorized as a Schedule 1 controlled substance on or after July 1, 2023. That includes a substance that may be identified later. So you can see here, though, everything that it does not include. I'm going to have your attention go to the bottom of the list of what is not included in this law. And that is hemp-derived feed products, hemp-derived fiber, grain, or topical products. That doesn't mean that those things are illegal. That just means that this law does not pertain to those. So in other words, hemp-derived feed products, you're not going to get taxed on those currently. Hemp-derived fiber, grain, those are not regulated and taxed. So that doesn't mean that that everything on this list is legal, not legal. That just means this law does not pertain to these items. So I mentioned earlier that as soon as the bill became law, again, yes, it is on May 11th. It was on May 11th, 23. Some things went into effect right away. The sale and distribution of these hemp-derived cannabinoids is authorized. Products sold or offered in violation are subject to seizure. So that went into effect right away. Again, I think a lot of these products were being sold already. Um, so this just made it legal. One important part of the law that went into effect immediately is that you must be 21 years or older to purchase these items. Also, that products must be maintained behind a counter or inaccessible to a customer. The grocery store, the little small town grocery store that's just about a half a mile from my house, it's not a big chain store. They sell these products and it's in a locked cabinet that's kind of near where checkout is because there's not a big area. This particular grocery store doesn't sell tobacco or anything like that. So they had to kind of create an area, but very similar to tobacco products. Same thing, sold from behind a counter or at least inaccessible, locked cabinet, that kind of thing. We'll note too, it is an offense to knowingly sell or distribute a product containing a hemp-derived cannabinoid without first having obtained proof of age. So very similar to the tobacco and alcohol laws we've got out there. Um, this is an offense. It's a Class A misdemeanor. So careful for that. All right, so the tax requirement. This is where Department of Revenue big time stepped in on this law, in addition to how we will in the future with inspections and stuff. But beginning July 1 of 2023, there was a 6% sales tax in addition to state and local regular sales tax added to these products. Um, again, this tax is in addition to the regular sales tax that was already on the products. Again, similar to the way the alcohol taxes are. The tax applies to the sales price of products containing hemp-derived cannabinoids when sold at retail in Tennessee. I did see, I don't have the note in front of me right now, but a couple of you on your registration forms asked about what about the wholesale sale of these products. Just like all products, if someone provides you with a resale certificate, you do not need to charge them tax if it's a valid resale certificate and you're buying these products. But I will say all the other aspects of regulation of these products do go into effect for those who are wholesaling the products too. So same labeling, uh, rules and all of that, which we'll get into, but just tax wise, it's only on the retail sale. Taxpayers will file a monthly return with the Tennessee Department of Revenue and remit payment on or before the 20th day of each month. So if you're already familiar with filing a sales tax return, it is on that sales tax return. Your sales tax return is due on the 20th day of the month following the period that you're filing for. So when this law went into effect on July 1, 2023, you should have started charging the 6% sales tax on these products in addition to regular sales tax, state rate plus your local rate. And that would have been due starting by August 20th, 2023, and every month thereon. So that's how that goes. This is a screenshot of what it looks like on the 10 tap sales tax return, the SLC 450. hemp-derived cannabinoids have their own schedule. It is Schedule H. When you're on the return, it's going to be a required question. Do you have hemp-derived cannabinoid sales to report? If you answer yes, then the schedule will populate. If you answer no, nothing happens there. So here's where you will here's how you will fill out the schedule. You will choose the product type from a drop down, and then actually there's an other there's a field for other. I'm not sure what that might be for, but you'll do your gross sales, and then the system, our 10 tap system, will calculate the tax that's due on that. Pretty simple. This all feeds back into line 17 of the sales tax return. So already in place if you're selling these products, just like with other with sales tax in general, whether you charge sales tax or not, it's due. So hopefully you've been charging it and reporting it on this Schedule H of the sales tax return every month since this became law. So I'm going to have Tommy join me now and talk to us about what's about to become effective. So everything we've talked about so far, Tommy, we're already doing, right? You got to be 21 to buy these products. They've got to be locked up or behind a counter. You got to be charging sales tax. What is to come on all of this?
Yeah, a lot. So that's some examples of some specific requirements that are going to be effectuated. Really now it starts, but we're going to be inspecting for it in July. And so there's specific requirements. It's going to be monitored by several different entities. Some of these have concurrent jurisdiction with state and local law enforcement. So, Katie, the ones that you just talked about, 21 or over, product inaccessible to the consumer, local and state law enforcement has concurrent jurisdiction over those two, specifically in the law. And so, you may be visited by local law enforcement that sees that you're in non-compliance there, and then that would trigger, various sanctions. The sanctions, are varied. Some are criminal sanctions, A misdemeanors or C misdemeanors. Most, non-compliant hemp uh, in a store, a retail store, subject to seizure. Uh, so you got that going for you, with the criminal sanctions possible, and then the Department of Agriculture can actually fine you. So it's a series of fines. I think 1,000, then it increases up until about the fourth occasion where they could possibly take your license. So I'm not sure how agriculture is going to navigate that, but they definitely have fines within that state entity when they do their inspections. But for the most part, agriculture and revenue will have some inspection requirements starting in July. From our side, from revenue side, I expect those to start off educational. We're going to try. We're already our revenue regulatory officers who go out and inspect for for compliance with regulatory requirements. We inspect tobacco, we have beer, petroleum fuel, we have different things that we look at. We're adding this to their workload. We're becoming subject matter experts on it, but our revenue regulatory officers uh, may already have visited you. And so the task right now is education, to have a discussion with you about the requirements, answer questions if we can. And I expect that to go on in July, where we do our inspections. We find issues with product labeling or advertising. We're going to bring that to your attention. We're going to have that off the shelves, and we're going to work with you. But it's going to be eventually something that where it's subject to seizure. And I'll talk to you about our thoughts on that here towards the end. Let me navigate here. I'm going to do that. Yeah, I've got some notes on the different, the breakdown. So you have licensing with agriculture. That's a requirement. I think ag, they're working on their protocols for that. And I think one of the things that they're going to require is first, before you can get your license with ag, is to be registered with the Department of Revenue. So you want to be thinking about that. If you selling this product, or if you have plans to sell this product, you're going to have to show that you're registered with revenue in order to get your license from ag when that becomes available. We're going to specifically be looking at taxation issues. If you have this product that's subject to the 6% additional tax, we're going to be verifying that you're collecting and remitting that accurately. So we're going to be looking at those returns, and we're going to be looking to see if you're remitting that. If not, it kind of triggers something else. So sales tax evasion in Tennessee is a felony. And so intentional or willful through some kind of scheme, trying to keep that tax and trying to hide the amount that you collect would be, one of the more serious things that you could do. But so we said 21, product inaccessible. There's requirements for your retail location that can't be close to a school. There's a date trigger there, but definitely any new businesses selling this product has to be 1,000 feet away from a school, K through 12. There's regulations for transporting this product, certain bills of lading and documentary evidence that you got it from a licensed, appropriate wholesaler during transport. There's packaging requirements. Some of this is kind of weird. It's poison prevention packaging that it has to be in, but also if a person buys this product and they separate it and put it into like a Glad bag, a Ziploc bag, or something like that, that's actually a C misdemeanor. So if somebody comes in your stores and buys product and they separate it out into little baggies, that's a C misdemeanor, and the retail store should be aware of that as well. So if you have product in packaging and you try to separate it out, it could be a problem on the retail side. We're going to be looking at labeling. There's different labeling issues. Has to have an expiration date, QR codes, things of that nature. That's very specific in the law, those requirements. And then advertising. I always say, you can't have Scooby-Doo on the packaging. So if you're advertising towards kids, or if the gummies are shaped like a cartoon character, those are issues. And, the different issues are subject to different penalties by different groups, whether it be criminal, misdemeanors, I think mostly in the law, civil, where there's fines from agriculture, or just plain seizure, where we just seize the product and then we dispose of it. So there would be a loss to retail. And again, those requirements, those specific requirements, are in Tennessee Code Annotated. I think you have the public chapter, but Tennessee Code Annotated, it was concretized in that 43-27201 all the way through to 11. Let me flip through here and see if I've missed stuff. Yeah, it's talking about transport, your bill of lading. It's very similar, to how we regulate beer and things of that nature. You have to have a proper documentation for transport. This doesn't apply to the person who buys the product and puts it in their car and transports it home or wherever. So it's not applicable to that. It's just applicable for the wholesalers delivering to the retail. Yeah, I like expiration date on that one. It has to have an expiration date. The It doesn't specifically say if you're in violation of the expiration date, if it's past expiration. It's out of time there. What we would do, it's just wanting us to verify that there's an expiration date, and maybe that's because they want the consumers to be able to look and see for themselves. But I would be cautious of selling expired product. I don't know how we're going to view that. It just has to have a date at this point. A lot of this, we run concurrent with agriculture on the retail side of things. And so revenue is only going to be looking at retail stores. Revenue is going to be doing a lot. I mean, agriculture is going to be doing a lot of the testing. I think their inspectors are kind of field to store inspectors, where they're going to be testing at various stages in the fields, during production of product, and then at the retail location as well. So it's going to be more of an ag thing. And I know we're working closely with them. We'll be sharing information and strategies and what's working. So we're working closely with them, and I know they're very busy trying to be set up and ready to go for you guys. That's what we're talking about, the fines. I thought it was interesting in law that ag has a fine capability and revenue does not. So it could be the same issue. Revenue could go in and see a non-compliant hemp product, and we would seize it, but we have no fine capabilities. An ag inspector could follow up and find it, and so you get a seizure and a fine on top of that. And that's something that we'll be talking about as we get closer. Is it something that if we find non-compliant hemp that we report to ag and that there's an associated fine with that? So I'm not sure how that's going to play yet. So just kind of a recap, I think we've hit most of the areas. You can take the law and kind of break them down into general categories, and there's specifics under each law that has to be there. And then again, when we inspect, we'll have a certain criteria that we're going to be looking for. But most important for revenue is we want to make sure that you're licensed. We want to make sure that you're remitting appropriate amount of tax. We'll definitely be looking at that. And then some of the other things has some concurrent jurisdiction with local state law enforcement. Agriculture will be doing the same. I mean, it's possible, not probable, but it's possible that on July 1st you have your local police, your state police, revenue, and agriculture all come and visit you, and with the various sanctions. I don't think that's going to be the case day one, but it is a highly regulated product. There's going to be a lot of effort into making sure that we comply with those specific requirements that we talked about. And from my side, from revenue side, we want to just offer support, help, and education, especially at this time. So it's one of the reasons we're having the webinar. The revenue regulatory officers that are under my staff that are doing these kind of inspections now, when they see you, they're possibly gonna visit and just give you a copy of the public notice, try to answer questions. And then early on, we're going to try to be more of an educational help to you, so this can be a success for you and not a burden. So hopefully we can all work together and be very successful in this.
It's
If
good
you have
for all of
questions or
us.
we want your input, we want your questions, and we want to be able to help you.
Hey, Katie, can you do me a favor and go back to the slide that talks about the taxable products
Sure.
real quick? This is something that a lot of people are talking about in chat. So to me, and Tommy, I'll get you to weigh in on this as well. To me, if this product has any of these things in green right here on this side, on the left side, it's taxable. And if it were to just have things on this side, on the right side, it would not be taxable. Do you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, so it may have some of the products in red there in the labeling, So
Right.
you may see in the labeling a certain percentage of, you know, cannabichromamine. I can't say those words,
Yeah.
but it also
CBC.
has, yeah, it also has then enough of the green in it that makes it, you know. So you're looking at the green. If it has the right amount of the green product in your product, then it would be taxable.
Right. So, and Katie went to the next slide here too, which I thought was really important too. So, again, when we're talking about these definitions, you're talking about trying to see if it's subject to tax. Obviously, it's not necessarily, we're not here to talk about the legality of the substance itself. We're talking about the taxation of the substance. So when you talk about that, if a taxable substance is in the product, it's subject to tax. I know that sounds kind of goofy and crazy, right? But I mean, we could, a lot of the people in the chat were saying, well, what about if it's this and it's mixed with it? Well, I don't think it matters. I think if it has a taxable substance in it, it's going to be subject to tax. So I think that's where we want to concentrate. If you don't meet the qualifications, certainly don't collect tax, but just be real sure. And I thought it was really interesting about what Tommy said about labeling and packaging and things of that nature, and how important it is to make sure that the products comply. So if any of you on the webinar today are producers and you're coming up with this packaging, you make sure, please, that you understand exactly what that law says, so that your packaging, as you roll it out to retailers, is compliant. Because when Tommy and his staff or the ag people or whoever come out and look at that, you don't want your product seized, obviously. I mean, you're not trying to do things wrong, you're trying to do it right. So that's kind of what we want you to concentrate on there too. And I found in chat too, just real quick, someone asked if, about the point of sale systems and stuff like that. We can't control how you operate your point of sale system. Okay, that's you as a retailer, and how you're going to identify these products that are subject to the additional 6% tax. We don't really have any real advice for you on that. We just need you to be compliant. Okay, so if you need to mark each product with a special sticker that's subject to the extra 6%, or if you've got it in your system that you could scan the barcode and it's going to ring up as an extra 6% product, that's cool. But we can't run that for you. That's something you got to run for yourself.
That may be a good follow-up too, and I can check with our TR3 staff. I'm really not sure why the schedule with a specific product. I think that was included as an aid or a help to reporters. I think the most important thing is how we feed into I don't know the line, it's line 17A. There's a specific line that we added to the tax return that's the most important one, where you want to make sure that the product that you sell that meets this law, that you're reporting the right amount of tax you collected on that line. Maybe not so much the schedule where you're breaking down each product. That if you guys are okay, I'll check with Greer on that and make sure what that schedule is supposed to entail, or if it's just an aid, or if it's a requirement. And then how do you follow up on those kind
I
of
can add
questions?
it to the PowerPoint that we will post along to this
Okay.
PowerPoint that we post alongside the video. I can add it to that. I was wondering if perhaps it had something to do with with alcohol and price schedules with alcohol, the way that's regulated. You have to keep track of exactly what types of alcohol and in what quantities are being sold. Maybe down the road there's going to be that requirement for him. I didn't notice it in the law per se
Right.
that it had to be broken out like that. But it is broken out like that. I would say stick as closely to that as possible if you're not currently, breaking things down like that.
It could be that the Department of Agriculture is actually trying to track this as well, so they can look at volumes and who's producing what, and it may aid them on their end in compliance too. I haven't talked to agricultural about that specifically, but sometimes when we get requests from other departments for a little bit more detail than what we're used to at revenue, it's because there's some compliance type deal out there. It
Right.
could be that. Yeah. But like Katie said, stick to it as closely as you can. You'll be fine.
I wanted to bring up, Andy says, why is Delta 9 not listed? That's a good point, Andy, and I think I'd like to update this slide right here. This slide is all does in the green here should also be Delta 9 at less than 0.3.
Right.
You are
Right,
correct.
because that says it on the other slide, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
it
Just
does.
agree
for
with you, Katie.
clarification, I'm going to add that to that. Thank you for bringing that
Okay.
to our attention.
But yeah, I think a good point though is Delta 9 that's higher than 0.3% is not taxable. It's actually illegal illegal to sell. So yeah,
Right.
you want to be careful with that nuance.
In Tennessee, it is.
Right.
Right. At
We
this
can't
point.
speak for other states, guys. We're talking about Tennessee today. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
paying
right.
paying tax on illegal marijuana is not going to make it
Yes.
magically legal, so you don't have to collect or remit for those sales.
Laura made a good point here about people selling these products on the sidewalk, on Broadway. That is part of the law that they were shut down because the law says that you're not allowed to do that anymore. It very specifically says it cannot be sold on the streets or sidewalks.
Yeah.
Another good question we got. Oops, I just closed out of it. I have the law up right now. I'm not going to scroll through here to find out who asked it, but about, do the wholesalers have to abide by the same labeling and product laws? I'm going to share my screen real quick and take you right over directly to the public chapter and show you what I found as an answer to that. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, here is the public chapter. I'm on page 6 of 9 of it, and you see here,
Can you blow it up just a little bit,
yeah,
Miss Katie?
I can blow
Thanks.
it up a lot if I need to here. Let's see.
Yeah, there
How's
you go.
that?
Nice.
okay?
There you go.
Okay.
Thanks.
So 4327-209 here, and this is talking about the product safety stuff and labeling. If you see here, A of this part says a product containing a hemp-derived cannabinoid that is sold at retail must blah, blah, blah. And then it goes on with all this stuff. So that's your keyword there, retail. So if you're a wholesaler of this, I would say, according to this law, that the labeling aspects are not your concern. But if you're selling this to the general public, if you're a retailer, this is where you have to comply with all of these
But
rules.
here's a big old bet. So
Right.
well, obviously, if I'm a wholesaler, I'm going to want to have the same kind of the right packaging on what I'm
I
going to sell
agree.
to a retailer, because hello, it's they're going to have that anyway. Would you
Right.
not do that? Yeah, of course you would, right? So because you're smart and you're going to make your retailers happy and not have them out of compliance. So yeah, even though the law says that, like you say, Katie, a good business person is going to do the smart thing there anyway.
I'm going to put the
Yeah,
link to this public chapter in here again, just for all of y'all.
in the law that we're talking about under labeling, it specifically notes that one of the requirements is a QR code has to be part of the labeling, and that QR code is going to connect to, the method of analysis and results of the product, the panel for potency, and that kind of thing. So I guess I'm asking the retailers a question. Is there going to be a list of authorized wholesalers that you have confidence that if you buy from that wholesaler, that it's going to be compliant with labeling and other things? And then, that's part of ag's responsibility to look at field wholesalers, manufacturers, and they're going to give us a thumbs up on the manufacturers and the wholesalers that we can buy from that's going to meet these requirements. Do retailers know, right now, are you just buying from anyone? Or are you buying from a listing of approved wholesalers?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and just keep in mind too, there's other producers that are actually retailers too. So
Right.
they're wearing two hats here in some
Yeah.
cases,
And I think that's the thing is if we go in for an inspection and the label is not right, it's not meeting these standards, the net weight of the product is not shown. It doesn't have an expiration date. We don't link to an appropriate QR code, then that's going to be non-compliant hemp subject to seizure. And then we're going to follow up to say, hey, where do you get this product? Who is the wholesaler? And then we're going to work with ag to make sure that that wholesaler either is not in business in Tennessee or they get into compliance.
Kelly has a really good question here. Can CBD versus THC products have an in-store tasting? I've read this law backwards and forwards a handful of times, and I don't recall seeing any mention of that. Tommy, do you recall hearing anything about that in your talks with ag? Or I don't know.
No, I haven't. That's a
It's a
good
good
question.
question.
But yeah, I mean, you hit a point earlier that you can't knowingly distribute samples of product on the public street, a sidewalk, or a park. So that is very specific, but I don't think it says samples in store.
Yeah,
Dan's
I'm
on. So
looking.
Dan, you got something?
No, not for an answer to that question. I've got another question. So I'll wait till y'all are done.
Yeah,
I'm just searching the public chapter right now for the word sample in general, and I see here is an offense to knowingly distribute samples containing HDC in or on a public street, sidewalk, or park, like Tommy just mentioned. The rest
think
is samplings for the testing purposes. Testing the ag is going to be doing. There's
I
no
think
other
we may need
mention of.
ags. So ag is coming up with rules that's going to be, effective as well. So as long as it doesn't become a non-compliance issue with the rule that ag, sets out, then
Yeah.
it's going to be one of those things that is going to happen. It's not a violation, but then they change the law because it becomes a problem or it's just allowed. Sounds like a great idea, but as long as it doesn't mismatch with the rule from ag that's coming later.
We've had a couple of questions about wanting to know if this product can be sold at events, music festivals, art festivals, flea markets. What do you know about that?
Here's what I think about that. I think the product has to be sold on location of the licensed retailer.
I think that's
So
right.
they're very specific, and that's kind of the information that we're sharing is the location of the revenue business. So my quick thought on that is it can't be sold outside of the licensed registered business location.
Yeah, the law specifically says says it must be sold at a retail establishment. There's various throughout the TCA. I think there's probably various definitions of retail establishment, but that's a place of business.
Yeah.
Or like Tommy said, the licensee. So at this point, I would say that as far as we know from the law as it's written currently, now that could change, but as the time of this, I don't think you can.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to be careful too as a retailer transporting product, so you'd have to comply with the transport, the bill of lading and all that kind of stuff. Plus you got to be 1,000, feet away from a school. But I think the overriding thought is what you just said, Katie, is the location of the business is very specific and it's part of the licensing with ag.
I would hope to see a little bit more about that when ag does come out with their rules here in the next few months. That would be interesting to follow that question.
And
Yeah.
guys, what I did, I just put a link in the chat for the Department of Agriculture's webpage
Perfect.
on hemp.
Got that here too.
They do have some information, but it's not probably as robust as it's going to be. So I think people should be very, very much wanting to check into that, particularly as we come up to new things happening this summer.
So on that note, this page here, it's page 18 of the PDF on the information in our sales tax manual. That our sales tax manual has been updated to include all the information as far as the taxability of it in terms of this law, in our sales tax manual, here's the important notice link. It's important notice 2312. Another link to the public chapter. As Billy mentioned, a link to Department of Ag's Canvas webpage that doesn't have much on it right now, but I'd say that's going to change a lot here in the next couple months. And Mr. Sneed said that feel free to reach out to him directly if you've got questions about this right now. So
Yeah, the spirit of that was, we want to be educational. We want to be
right.
very supportive and helpful. We wanted, it's a marathon, not a sprint to some degree here but our main focus is on you, our customer, and we want to support you and help you. I hope I don't, regret that, but yeah, feel free to send me, if you have questions, or especially when it comes down to the inspection process and you have issues or questions about that, and then I'll make sure it gets into the right hands and we answer your question.
I would assume every retailer and wholesaler, everyone in this business is happy to have seen this law just pass, first of all, and then will want to do everything within their power to comply so that things do go smoothly for this, and everything
Absolutely.
we can do within our power to help it go smoothly as well. Let's see, do we have any other questions that we definitely know the answers to that we've got in the chat here that we haven't gotten to?
I think I got a question we may know the answer to.
Okay, Dan.
Faith asked, what about cannabis food trucks, which by nature move and have that licensure to sell cannabinoid infused food products? How does that impact the location restriction?
It's a good
What do we know
question.
about food trucks? We know that they're licensed where they park and they can go in other jurisdictions. So would that still continue if you had a cannabis food truck?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So that may be something that we try to vet a little bit more.
Yeah.
Again, that may be something that we'll have to work with agriculture on rules. It may not be specifically noted in the public chapter of the law, but they come up with a rule for it. But it's a wonderful question.
That is a good question. On that note, we got a question on the registration forms about what about if it's a food item? Does it get taxed at the food rate and then the 6% hemp tax on top of that? And, the special rate for food, it's a state rate, a special rate of 4%. It's on food and food ingredients. I will say that does not include prepared food, which most of these products are going to be prepared food.
Right.
I did see in the grocery store down the street from me that I was telling you about that has everything, all these products in a locked up case. They had honey in there. I just noticed honey in that locked up case. So like that would be an example of a food ingredient, I believe. Billy, you're better at understanding all this than I am. So in my opinion, a product like that, that's not a prepared food. That is a food ingredient. Tax that at 4% state rate plus your local rate plus the 6%. So
Right. And the sales tax manual that you reference on this slide, Katie, defines food and food ingredients. There's also an important notice, not this one that you're showing here, but a different one from years ago that defines what a food or a food ingredient is that makes that subject to the 4% state tax versus the 7%, what I call regular state sales tax.
hey,
And
there's a bill that came through a couple weeks ago. I saw that eliminates the state sales tax on food and food ingredients.
well, yes, Katie, and we
That's
see
another
lots of
topic, isn't
bills
it?
that come through this time of year, don't you know?
Lots of
And
bills. Yeah,
Lots of
a
bills.
lot of them do not make it to see
that's
the light
right.
of day.
That's
But
right.
if it does, great. The Department of Revenue is there to administer whatever the state legislature passes. That's what we do. And sometimes they tell us that the law is changing very quickly, and boy, does that make us run.
That's
But
right.
but at the same time, that's what we get paid to do is to be responsive. However, it's like anything else. It's just really important for people viewing today's presentation to know that, like Tommy said, we're here to help you. We want you to be compliant. We're not here to, with the express purpose of going out and seizing your products. That's not our thing. We have to do what we have to do. What we're trying to do is educate you so that we can all be on the same book. And like Tommy said, we kind of got a little, notice here of what's going to go on in the rules, and you've got ways to reach out to us. So we want to help you be compliant and to collect the correct amount of tax, which is always what our goal is to collect exactly what the law calls for, no more, no less.
Hey, Katie, I saw a couple of things. One is about the background check. If it applies to clerks and workers, that's going to be an ag function. So that's going to be a requirement of your licensure. And so agriculture should be able to give you more specific information about that. It's not going to be a requirement of revenue. So I'm not
Right.
sure how they're going to approach it. And
There
then
is
I thought,
there's
go ahead.
specifics in the law about that background check issue, so I would point you towards that.
Okay.
Looking to see where it is in the law. Yeah,
Well, you
I don't see right off the top of my head the answer to your question, but I would point you towards kind of reading through that law to see what it says about the background checks.
okay. I saw another one that says, something. Should I assume that if it says THC that it's this? And I just caught it quickly, so I didn't really read through it. But my advice would be no, definitely do not assume anything. The law is very specific in, the weight, the percentage of product, the types of product, and so yeah, sometimes I say things like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Unfortunately, July is coming up pretty quick, so we may have to pick up the pace a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely going to be worth your time to kind of make sure that the product that you have now, the product that you receive is from an appropriate wholesaler. It's labeled correctly pursuant to this, and it has the right, shape and that kind of stuff. Now would be a great time to kind of look at that inventory and make sure you're in compliance.
Going back to the tax issue again, too, in state tax, and not just in really all state tax law, the onus is upon the taxpayer to file and remit the tax properly. Okay. So in other words, we're in a voluntary compliance situation where you are not receiving a bill from us for a certain amount. You're just reporting the amount of tax that you would owe, and then you're remitting it, correct? So that's the one thing you want to do. Now, this is regardless of whether you collect it from the customer or not. Okay. So sometimes we get the question, well, I didn't really collect that tax on these sales. Do I still owe it? The answer is yes, you do. Okay. So this wouldn't be any different. So if you've made a mistake and you forgot to collect the extra 6%, I'm sorry, but there's not a way around it. We do want you to understand that it's still your responsibility to file and remit the correct amount of tax, regardless of whether you collected it or not. Okay, that's like state tax 101, so to speak, and it does come up every once in a while when we get email questions and questions in our call center as well.
We're kind of running short on time, y'all. I wanted to bring up one more good question question I thought was a good question that came through on your registration form as well. And someone asked about where's the money going for this? There's money coming in on licensing, which goes into effect soon. It's going to cost something to get a license, right? There's going to be some money that from the tax, right? Also from any of the violations. So I did look this up. TCA 676-232 says that revenue generated from the tax levied on these products must be deposited into a special account in the state's general fund, with 50% being allocated to the Department of Revenue and 50% being allocated to the Department of Agriculture, to be used exclusively for the regulation of these products. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe down the road that changes. Right now, this being a new law, it's the money for it's going right back into regulation of it and working all this out. But that's where it's going for now. The TCA 4327-206 states that the revenue collected from the licensing and penalty fees are to be deposited in the Tennessee Agriculture Regulatory Fund and used again exclusively for administration of this law. So that's where things stand right now, at least.
It sounds like the legislature is wanting to fund the people that are doing these inspections and providing other types
Probably.
of compliance efforts, as opposed to raising money for other things that we need in our state. So that's what it looks like to me.
Yep, that's right. Well, we have run out of time. Tommy, do you have anything you want to add on this topic, or
No,
if we didn't?
I think you guys did a great job. I mean, I think that the focus of this is we want to help you. We want to support you and guide you the best we
Right.
can. And so I'm going to be, the guy that's in charge of revenue inspections. And so, you have my heart that, we want this to be an educational journey together. And at some point, we will be seizing non-compliant hemp for the purpose of destroying that product, getting it off the shelves and in the streets. But we hope to be able to work with you so you don't find yourself in that situation. And again, I want you to notice that local and state law enforcement has concurrent jurisdiction over the age 21. You want to make sure you're compliant with that and having the product inaccessible to the public. So watch out for that. And then plus ag has some sanctions as well. So it's going to be a pretty regulated group, but we're hoping that things like this and some other educational opportunities to get you well prepared for the inspection process.
Great. So what you're saying, Tommy, is you're not going to go in on July 1, 24, guns ablazing with you don't have the expiration date on your
Right.
label, but
Revenue will not be taking that approach.
all
We
right.
can only speak for our agency.
I
Okay.
can
That's
only
right.
speak for revenue, but we will not be taking that approach. Right.
And
Yeah,
again, I
and
want to point you all back to this Tennessee Department of Agriculture cannabis webpage to be on the lookout on that webpage, as we will be as well. I know, Tommy, you're in discussions with that agency often about this law, but for all of you in listening to this, by the time you're watching this video of this, it may already be out there, but the link to the Department of Agriculture's cannabis webpage is going to have lots of information, I would suspect, in the very near future.
and we realize some of you have asked questions in chat that we haven't addressed. I think most of them are probably because they are Department of Agriculture related and they're to be determined. So do follow up on that resource there too.
For sure.
Katie, we'll mention in just a second here about the CPE credit. And we've had a couple of
Right.
those pop up.
Yes, I'll get to that in just a second. Just to bring your attention here to the various ways to reach out to us and be in the know. We've got Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn. Follow us. You can sign up for updates. You would get information about webinars that we have, laws that are passing, all kinds of stuff. So if you are in business in any way in Tennessee, be in touch with us or reach out to us in these ways. You've got our email address there, revenue.support@tn.gov. Of course, our tax helpline, 615-253-0600, and that's available Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 Central Time. There's a link if you've got the PDF open to all of our other contact numbers and office locations. And next webinar, this is going to be a good one. It's the last Tuesday of every month. We have this free webinar next month, March 26th. It's going to be recent F&E law changes. Now, I do want to point out that those are the law changes that were passed last year that are going into effect for this current, for what you're going to be filing for coming up in April. So for the 2023 tax period. We're not going to be discussing laws that may have gone and gotten passed or that are in the legislature right now currently. We also have a new business workshop coming up again soon on April 3rd, 2024. So if you're a new business, we highly recommend attending that. It's a 3-hour long workshop where we go into all the basics of sales tax, business tax, and F&E. You can get to both of those, the webinar page and our new business workshop page, by clicking on tn.gov/revenue, go into taxpayer education, and then you can click webinars or new business workshops. And like Billy said, we do offer CPE credit for you. If you, on your way out, fill out this quick little survey and answer yes to the CPE credit question. If you don't need CPE credit, please still fill out our survey. We love to hear from you and get some feedback. And if there's any ideas that you have for future webinars that we can have, we'd love to hear that too. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks again, Tommy. Thank you, Billy and Dan. And
We
we'll see
really
you.
appreciate you, everybody coming today. And thanks, Tommy and Dan and Katie, for everything you always do on these. And just hope people reach out to us and let us help you out. Okay.
That's right. Y'all take care. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone. Bye bye.